foreign, non-Korean speaking people around us, but still for many of our students, we don't have real opportunities to use the language outside the classroom, outside the campus. So that's why we have to take full advantage of the classroom situation, and thereby I really want to learn how to make our students speak out and then improve their communication skills and also improve my teaching skills.
Hello everyone, my name is Jingjing. As a MA TESOL student and also I'm a editor and freelancer. So I wish to developing the objective literature like Jangdong or
Hello, thank you for inviting me this program. Last week I just graduated my course. And I'm a student after school program in elementary school. So I'm always interested in interesting for my students. So I always try to some host to express them to express their opinion. So that's my.
That's your wish. Interesting. Say your name for me. Say your name. Say
Hagen.
Hagen.
So you can call me HK.
Hi, my name is Kyunghae. I just entered grade school in Sookyung, and I wish for being younger through learning. And another thing is I want to be more courageous in front of many people. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Gina, and I also want to be young. I want to be born young. Like born again as a baby. During all this wisdom and lifetime experience, that would be great.
Yes, that would be.
Hi, my name is Kayla. I'm taking TESOL program now. So after taking this program, I want to get confidence for speaking, listening, or writing in English. Because I want to be a really good teacher.
Hi, my name is Rachel. I'm taking my TESOL program now. Because I can be a teacher. I want to be a good teacher, and I want to be a friend with my teacher and my students. And then the one thing that I have on this is my students help. All of my students is healthy. I was last week. My second one was Wednesday. She was in the hospital for 4 days. So I don't know this chance.
Yes.
My name is
Say it again. Say it.
Shay. I wish for you.
You. Wonderful. Your English is much better than my Korean, so good for you. I got 2 words in Korean, and I don't think I'm pronouncing them right, but I tried. Okay.
Hi, my name is Boyan, and I'm an undergraduate student in University. I'm majoring in English, and I want to be a teacher who can be friendly with, and I want to remain a student as a funny teacher.
Sure. Yes. You have to speak the language to really learn it. I mean, it really helps when you can speak it and when you can hear other people speaking it as well. So I would do the same thing with my students, and it just gives them an opportunity to start speaking, just creating a seating chart and listening to each other. So what we're focusing on is this process we call shared inquiry. So some of you, only a few, so I'm not gonna, well, the definition is that shared inquiry is an active and collaborative search for answers to questions of meaning raised by the text. Active, the reason that we're set up like this is the whole idea together we're smarter. No one person in here is as smart as all of us combined. And so we're trying to think about the same problem, and as we listen to each other, we can build on each other's ideas and we get a better answer than we had at the beginning. So we're focusing on a question of meaning raised by the text. The text has to be open to interpretation. There has to be something in there that you don't understand. So I tell people the text needs to be odd. It does not work with everything. It doesn't work with textbooks. It doesn't work with factual information. But it does work with a lot of things. I was a social studies teacher. It works with primary source documents, with speeches, with lectures, but it didn't work with the textbook. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go through this process so that you can see what can come out of it. So these are the steps that the children would go through to have this discussion. The first thing that they would do is what we call a pre-reading activity. And that's actually what you just did. I knew it was the pre-reading, but you didn't know it was the pre-reading. A pre-reading is getting you connected to the story, but you don't know the connection yet because you don't know the story. But once we start reading the story, you'll say, oh, I can see the connection. So the pre-reading is a simple question anybody can answer. What would you wish for if you got to wish for something? So it's getting them thinking and talking. The first reading of the text is always read aloud by the teacher or on tape. We're trying to get them to hear what good reading sounds like. What does fluency sound like? What does expression sound like? And so the story is read to them. After a first reading, they have an opportunity to ask questions about the text. We're also trying to get them to do what good readers do. What do good readers do? Good readers ask questions about what they've read. Good readers are engaged with the reading. And how do I know they're engaged? Because afterwards, they should have some questions. They should say, wait a minute, I don't understand this. I'm wondering about this. Okay. So that's what we would consider a first day. Then we have some other activities. We might spend a day on vocabulary. Let's just look at some vocabulary in the materials because all of our texts are meant to have some new vocabulary for the students. So we'll take some time to look at vocabulary. We don't do it before a first reading because we want them to try to figure some things out within context. In the context of the sentence and in the context of the story and hearing it, can they figure it out? Then there is a second reading. They need to read the text again. We're trying to get them to see. You don't have to get everything the first time. There's no reason to understand it the first time. We can read it again. I always say to students, have you ever seen a movie more than once? Yeah, they have. Did you notice something the second time that you didn't notice the first time? Yes. A book is the same way. You're going to notice something the second time that you didn't notice the first time. So they need to read the text again. The second reading is any way they need it to be done. We do this program with kindergartners. It is read aloud to them a second time because they're not reading yet. But as they get older, they might be doing a partner read. It could be a whole class read again. They just need to do a second reading. And all of that is building up to the discussion. And the discussion is the heart of the program where my role changes. All I can do is ask questions and more questions to try to help you figure out some answers to the text. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to go through this story. And I'm going to read it to you. We did a brief pre-reading activity. I'm going to read it to you. I don't think we'll have an opportunity to share questions. But be thinking, if I was reading this to my students, I would say, be thinking about questions while I read, because afterwards I want to hear some of your questions.
What questions shall we ask?
They can ask absolutely anything. Yeah? So actually, we will. We'll find some time to do that. So I'm going to read it to you. thinking about questions while I read, and afterwards let's hear some of the questions you thought about, okay?
You guys have full copies and then with everybody else, so it starts way down here. Yeah, page 13.
The fisherman and his wife, brothers Grimm. There was once a fisherman and his wife who lived together in a hut by the seashore. The fisherman went out every day with his hook and line to catch fish, and he angled and angled. One day, he was sitting with his rod, looking into the clear water, when suddenly, down went the line to the bottom of the water. When he drew it up, he found a great fish on the hook. The fish said to him, "Fisherman, listen to me. Let me go. I am not a real fish, but an enchanted prince. What good shall I be to you if you land me? I shall not taste good, so put me back into the water again and let me swim away." "Well," said the fisherman, "no need of so many words about the matter. As you can speak, I'd much rather let you swim away." So he cast him back into the sea. Then the fisherman went home to his wife in the hut. "Well, husband," said the wife, "have you caught anything today?" "No," said the man. "That is, I did catch a huge fish, but as he said he was an enchanted prince, I let him go again." "Did you not wish for something?" asked his wife. "No," said the man. "What should I wish for?" "Oh dear," said the wife, "it is so dreadful always to live in this hut. You might as well have wished for a little cottage. I dare say he will give it to us. Go and be quick." When he went back, the sea was green and yellow and not nearly so clear. So he stood and said, "O man of the sea, come listen to me, for Alice, my wife, the plague of my life, has sent me to ask a boon of thee." Then the fish came swimming up and said, "Now then, what does she want?" "Oh," said the man, "my wife says that I should have asked you for something when I caught you. She does not want to live any longer in the hut and would rather have a cottage." "Go home," said the fish, "she has it already." So the man went home and found instead of the hut a little cottage, and his wife was sitting on a bench before the door. She took him by the hand and said to him, "Come in and see if this is not a great deal better." They went in, and there was a little sitting room, and a beautiful little bedroom, a kitchen, and a larder with all sorts of furniture, and iron and brassware of the very best. And at the back was a little yard with chickens and ducks and a little garden full of green vegetables and fruit. "Look," said the wife, "is not that nice?" "Yes," said the man, "if this can only last, we shall be happy the rest of our days." "We will see about that," said the wife. All went well for a week or a fortnight. Then the wife said, "Look here, husband, the cottage is really too small. I think the fish had better give us a larger house. I should like very much to live in a large stone castle. So go to your fish and he will send us a castle." "Oh, my dear wife," said the man, "the cottage is good enough. What do we want a castle for?" "Go along," said the wife. "He might just as well give it to us as not. Do as I say." The man did not want to go, and he said to himself, "It is not the right thing to do." Nevertheless, he went. When he came to the seaside, the water was purple and dark blue and gray and dark and not green and yellow as before. And he stood and said, "O man of the sea, come listen to me, for Alice, my wife, the plague of my life, has sent me to ask a boon of thee." "Now then, what does she want?" asked the fish. "Oh," said the man, half frightened, "she wants to live in a large stone castle." "Go home, she is already standing before the door," said the fish. Then the man went home as he supposed, but when he arrived, there stood in the place of the cottage a great castle of stone, and his wife was standing on the steps about to go in. So she took him by the hand and said, "Let us enter." With that, he went in with her. In the castle was a great hall with a marble floor, and there were a great many servants who led them through the large door. The passages were decked with tapestry, and the rooms with golden chairs and tables. Crystal chandeliers were hanging from the ceiling, and all the rooms had carpet. The tables were spread with the most delicious foods for anyone who wanted them. At the back of the house was a stable yard for horses and cattle and carriages of the finest. Besides, there was a splendid large garden with the most beautiful flowers and fine fruit trees, and also a park full half a mile long with
deer, oxen, sheep, and everything the heart could wish for. There, said the wife, is not this beautiful? Oh yes, said the man, if it will only last. We can live here in this fine castle and be very well contented. We will see about that, said the wife. The next morning, the wife awakened at the break of day, and she looked out her window and saw the beautiful country lying all around. Husband, she called, look out the window. Just think if we could be king over all this country. Go to your fish and tell him we should like to be king. Now, wife, said the man, what should we want to be kings for? I don't want to be king. Well, said the wife, if you don't want to be king, I will be. You must go to your fish at once. I must be king. So the man went, very much put out that his wife should want to be king. He did not want to go, and yet he went all the same. When he came to the sea, the water was dark and gray and rushed far inland, and he stood there and said, O man of the sea, come listen to me, for Alice, my wife, the plague of my life, has sent me to ask a boon of thee. Now then, what does she want? Asked the fish. Oh dear, said the man, she wants to be king. Go home, she is so already, said the fish. So the man went back, and as he came to the palace, he saw it was very much larger and had great towers and splendid gateways. The herald stood before the door, and there were a number of soldiers with kettle drums and trumpets. When he came inside, everything was of marble and gold, and there were many curtains with great gold tassels. Then he went through the doors to the throne room, and there was his wife sitting upon a throne of gold and diamonds, and she had a great golden crown on her head, and a scepter in her hand, which was of pure gold and jewels, and on each side stood 6 pages in a row, each one a head shorter than the other. So the man went up to her and said, Well, wife, so now you are king. Yes, she said, now I am king. Then he stood and looked at her, and when he had gazed at her for some time, he said, Well, wife, this is fine for you to be king. Now there is nothing more to ask for. Oh, husband, said the wife, seemingly quite restless, I'm tired of this already. Go to your fish and tell him that now I am king, I must be emperor. Now, wife, said the man, what do you want to be emperor for? Husband, said she, go and tell the fish I want to be emperor. Oh dear, said the man, he could not do it. I cannot ask him such a thing. There is but one emperor at a time. The fish can't possibly make anyone emperor. Indeed he can't. Now look here, said the wife, I am king, and you are only my husband. So will you go at once? Go along. For if he was able to make me king, he is able to make me emperor, and I will and must be emperor. So go along. So he was obliged to go, and as he went, he felt very uncomfortable about it. And he thought to himself, it is not at all the right thing to do. To want to be emperor is going too far. The fish will soon get tired of this. With this, he came to the sea, and the water was quite black, and the foam flew, and the wind blew, and the man was terrified. But he stood and said, O man of the sea, come listen to me. For Alice, my wife, the plague of my life, has sent me to ask a boon of thee. Now what is it? Asked the fish. Oh dear, said the man, my wife wants to be emperor. Go home, said the fish, she is emperor already. So the man went home and found a castle adorned with polished marble and golden gates. The troops were being marshaled before the door, and they were blowing trumpets and beating drums. And when he entered, he saw barons, earls, dukes waiting about like servants, and the doors were of bright gold. He saw his wife sitting upon a throne of solid gold, and it was about 2 miles high. She had a great golden crown on, set in precious stones, and in one hand she had a scepter, and in the other a globe. And on both sides of her stood pages in a row, all arranged according to size, from the enormous giant of 2 miles high to the tiniest dwarf the size of my little finger, and before her stood earls and dukes in the crowd. So the man went up to her and said, Well, wife, so now you are emperor. I hope you are contented at last. We will see about that, said the wife. With that they went to bed, but she was as far as ever from being content, and she could not get to sleep for thinking of what she would like to be next. The next morning, as she sat by the window watching the sunrise, she said, Oh, I have it! What if I could make make the sun and the moon to rise. Husband, she called, wake up and go to your fish and tell him I want power over the sun and moon. Oh, wife, said the man, the fish cannot do that. Do be contented, I beg you. But she became most impatient and said, I can wait no longer. Go at once. So off he went, as well as he could for fright. And a dreadful storm arose, so that he could hardly keep on his feet. The houses and trees were blown down, and the mountains trembled, and rocks fell in the sea. The sky was quite black, and it thundered and lightning, and the waves crowned with foam ran mountains high. So he cried out, Oh, man of the sea, come listen to me, for Alice, my wife, the plague of my life, has sent me to ask a boon of thee. Well, what now? Said the fish. Oh dear, said the man, she wants to order about the sun and the moon. Go home with you, said the fish, and you will find her in her old hut. And they are sitting there to this very day. Take a minute, get some space. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Take a minute, write a question. After hearing this story for the first time, what questions do you have about the story? Okay. Let's hear some questions that you have.
Did the wife learn her lesson?
What characters are there in the story?
Louder for me.
What characters? What characters?
What characters?
Yes. What characters are there in the story?
What characters are those? What else?
Where did the fish come from?
How do you take the prince into a fish?
Was that another question? I missed it if it was.
Where did the fish come from? Like, how did he get into the water? Because he said he was a prince.
Prince.
Yeah.
Maybe the witch turned him into a fish.
And how on earth is that a power?
How?
A magic power.
How? I'm sorry, say the question.
How on earth did the fish have a magic power to let all the wishes come true?
What was the relationship?
What would be a prince?
What was the relationship between the fulfillment of a more extravagant wish and the turmoil of the sea or the water? Why did it cause the water to be more?
Can you say again for me? What was the relationship between?
No, they like every time he wished for something more extravagant, like the sea was angrier or darker. So what effect did the wishes have on the world in general? Yeah, it's deep. I've heard this story so many times.
Have you?
Yeah, I use it for teaching literature circles in the literacy class.
Good. Other questions? Yeah, sure.
What was the wife like when they met? I mean,
did he have to buy her a Louis Vuitton bag before engaged or after?
When they met. Okay, let's see if I can get back. Let's see if this does it. Okay, so after first reading, they're allowed to ask any question they want to ask. But what we talk about in the training are the different types of questions. Because some questions will take us back to the text and we'll be able to find evidence, and other questions are going to take us off and we're just going to sort of imagine, and we're just going to, what we call speculate. So we're trying to get them to ask questions that are going to take us back into the text. A question that takes you back into the text is one that we call interpretive, because it has multiple answers, and the answers are going to come from the text. Okay? A speculative question is one that we're going to guess. We don't have evidence in the text. It's just something we'd like to know, and we're wondering. Okay? So I just gave you two types of questions. an interpretive, and a speculative. I want you to try to identify a few of these. How did the fish get in the water? Which one is that?
Speculative.
Speculative. We're going to guess. Nothing. There's purposes to a speculative, but is not going to take us back to evidence.
Most of these are speculative.
Most of them are speculative.
Okay, how about I'll put the one, what does the ending mean?
Okay.
Like, what
Yes.
what happens in the end, really? I don't think everyone probably gets it. Like,
Will not. Say it.
That's all speculative.
no, but what do you think the ending means?
There it is. If you keep it there, then you changed it a little bit. Yes, there's one that is interpreted. When we do the trainings, I teach the teachers, it's very simple to come up with an interpretive question. Why author's language? Why author's language? Why questions work? Why did the fisherman keep going to the fish even though he said it's not the right thing to do? Why did he say, Alice, my wife, the plague of my life? Why did he keep saying that? It was funny, I was working with a group, I think we were second grade, working on this story, and I asked the children, what does it mean to be a plague? And they were like, oh, it's a good thing. He's complimenting her. And I was like, no, he's not. We need to get plague right. He is not complimenting his wife. It's a horrible thing to be a plague. And yet he keeps saying it again and again. Why? There was one about this one. The relationship between the wishes and the turmoil of the water and the, if you noticed it, every time it changed. There's something there the author wants us to look at and discuss. So watch out for things like that. So after first reading, and again, we talk to the children about this, we train the teachers in it, and then the teachers have to train the children to ask better questions as well, because the ones that a lot of people ask in the beginning are speculative, because we don't know of an interpreter. We've never been taught how do you ask that interpretive question. So that's day one, okay? Then they have another day to read the text again, and you can see how they need some time to sort of step away from it, because it's a long text. A lot of our texts are long, and they need a chance to go do other things before they come back and they see this fresh. Okay, so I'm gonna send you back to at least try to read a couple pages. So during a second reading, the children have something that they're doing. I always say children are smart when they need to be. When they're looking for a way out of something, their little brain is going. And if you tell them to reread something, they're going to stare at the page, but they're not going to read. They're going to stare and sort of think to themselves and stare, and then they're going to turn the page and stare and stare. They're not reading it. So they have something that they're doing to make sure that they're doing a reading. Oops. And I don't like the one that's up there. That's what I'm thinking about. I was like, I don't like that one. So I'm going to change it real quickly. I want you to, while you're reading it again, I want you to mark with a star anything that seems important to you. Mark with a star anything that seems important. Have a couple minutes, so it'll be a quick skim read sort of thing. Okay, turn to someone next to you and share with them something you marked as important. Okay, so that's another day for them to do another reading and then discuss. But I like, you already see it. Like people were noticing things because of the questions that were asked on day one. As they read it again, they were like, wait a minute, I'm marking that because I guess I didn't catch that. That's fine. So we're already learning from each other. And then as we do a second reading, then people start to discuss it and they start to understand the story better. Like, oh, I can see why you would say that. And they're starting to talk and think about the story. But the next day is discussion. And this day, all I can do as the leader is ask questions and more questions. So we'll focus on one question. And the whole idea is that together we're smarter as we all focus on this one question, sort of oddity from the text, as we listen to each other and build on each other's ideas. So there are basically 5 guidelines that we have for discussion before the children can start discussing that we review. And the first one is you have to have read the story before you can take part in discussion. Right? Obvious. A little bit obvious. We need to have read the story. Okay. Sometimes I ask children, why is that important? And a kindergartner said to me, how can you discuss something you don't know? Like I was so stupid to even think it was hilarious. But I was like, you're absolutely right. You know, adults do it all the time. But yeah, you're right. We should know what we're talking about before we just start trying to have a discussion. So we have 2 readings of the text so that they have time to work with it and deal with it before we discuss it. The second guideline is that we have to stay focused on this story. Not that they can't make connections. Connections are wonderful. Text-to-self connections, which kindergartners start to do. Text-to-other text connections, I've heard 2nd graders do. Text-to-world connections, about 5th grade, they start doing that. But we cannot discuss that other thing. We can't have a full discussion on that other thing because it's going to break rule number 1. We don't know that everybody knows about what you're trying to discuss and how you're trying to connect it. You've got to make the connection and bring it back to the story that we all have in common. This story, I mean, there's a lot of, fairy tale, folk tales that has a lot of connections that way, but they've got to connect it and then bring it back to the one that we all have in common. The third rule is that they have to have evidence for what they're saying. We are trying to interpret the text, and an idea is great. You have to have an idea, but did the author mean that? And if he did, he gave you some evidence in the story that would make you think that. So I'm going to constantly be saying, well, what in the story made you think that? Or where in the story did you see that? And the whole idea, together we're smarter, so help each other, especially since we only had one reading. If you can remember a part and you know a part that's going to help somebody with evidence, feel free to help them. And say, wait, I can think of a part, remember when, and then we'll all look for it together. That's fine. So they know that they have to have evidence to support their answers. The fourth guideline that we just recently put in is listen to each other and talk to each other. The children are very used to looking at the teacher, talking to the teacher, looking at the teacher, talking to the teacher. But now we've got them set up like this, and we're trying to get them to look and talk to each other. The rule isn't really look at the teacher and talk to the teacher. The rule is look at who's ever talking. But yet, most of the time, it's the teacher, so they're just very trained to look at the teacher. And we need to teach them to look at each other. Whoever is speaking has the floor, and your eyes go to them. It's interesting. They're missing some things. And it's not until you start to do it that you realize, why aren't my children looking at the person who is speaking? They don't realize it's rude. You're basically saying you're not important. I'm not paying attention to you because while you're speaking, I'm like, and then they get called on, and they're like, yeah. No. And another thing is hilarious in the classrooms. They focus on the teacher, and they just look directly at me the whole time. And I'm like, that is what psychopaths do, okay? Normal people do not pick one person in a presentation and just stare at them the whole time. If I just decided, man, Dave's it, the whole time I'm talking, I'm just staring at Dave like, oh, this is a really interesting presentation. You don't have to look, right? Dave's like, what is wrong with her? She wants her wishes. And then children do the same thing. They discuss and they stare at me like I'm the only person in the room. And I'm like, stop freaking me out. You're freaking me out like I want to run to my car. Why are you staring at me like that? Look, your gaze wanders. And it's just a little thing, it's a discussion technique that they don't even know how to do because we haven't had a lot of discussions with them. And so some things you have to really teach them in the beginning. And the fifth guideline is all I can do is ask questions and more questions. I am no longer the teacher with all the answers. I'm a human being trying to figure something out. I'm a lifelong learner who hasn't figured out the world yet. Why is it that I'm like, all knowledge? Oh! No. I'm still human. And if you are human, hopefully, every day of your life you learn something new. You grow, you change. I'm not the one with all the answers. And so to sort of get my opinion out, to make me not the one that's got the right answer, all I can do is ask questions and more questions. And it makes the children start to think for themselves as they look at text for evidence of what they're saying, as they listen and they build on the ideas of others. So I have a question about this story. But you can take a minute, take a sheet. It says the focus question. I have a question about this story. I want you to take a minute, write my question, write your answer to my question, and find some evidence in the text that supports your answer. My question is this: why is the fisherman's wife never content? Thank you. Yeah, I know, right?
Fisherman's
Yeah. Yes. Come behind you. It's fine. Thank you. to your evidence. So when I ask you for evidence, you can quickly take us there. You've already found it. You've had the time to find it. Another minute. Okay, just some other general things I would say to the students. You don't have to raise your hands, because if they're raising their hands all the time, the focus is on me. As I call on you, and I call on you, and I call on you, and that's not a discussion. A discussion somehow jumps within itself, so we're giving them the freedom to do that and to figure it out. As long as I'm the one figuring it out, no, you can speak now, you can speak now. They're never going to realize the dynamic of a discussion and how you listen for the pauses and how you look for the body language, and they have to figure that out. Ideal setup is a complete circle. I'm included in that circle, and people can see each other, because again, we're trying to teach them eye contact and things like that they should be doing in discussion. I can only ask questions. That doesn't mean you can't ask questions. If somebody says something that you don't understand, ask them a question about that. If you have a question about another part of the story, ask a question about that. I am in follow-ups only. I can only follow up where you take me. Take me somewhere else. There's so much in this story I'd like to discuss. Let's discuss it. What else? I cannot make comments. I can't say that's a good idea, that's interesting. If somebody says something that you think is a good idea, tell them that was a good idea. I hadn't really thought about that. The whole idea is that we're building something. So we need to really listen to one another as we try to build and create something that we aren't able to create on our own. So I remember the quote that we have in front of us: a great discussion is known by the skill with which participants listen to one another. So I'm going to jump into the role of the leader and ask questions only, and somebody get us started. My question was, why is the fisherman's wife never content?
My theory was perhaps she was spoiled by her father, and maybe when they got married, the husband was a little richer, and they just weren't as rich, and she, in her mind, she downgraded. It's like, well, my dad spoiled me, why can't you spoil me too? Well, now I expect things. It's since this fish is able to take care of my needs.
What evidence do we have in the text, Kara, that she was spoiled by her father?
He might as well give it to us. He might as well just give it to us. Why not?
Where are you? What page are you on, Kara?
14 and 15.
14.
And
Give us just one. 14?
yeah, he will give it to us. So maybe that's something she was used to.
This is interesting.
That's good.
I watch modern reality, I guess.
What I think this story is an allegory. It's none of it makes sense literally. So I look for the metaphor, and the metaphor that I think the central metaphor is that this man, his wife is a plague, his life. She's a disease. Therefore, she can never be content, as diseases are not content until they consume their hosts completely. That was my evidence. He knows the fisherman knows his wife the best, more than any of us, because he's been living with her his whole life, and he describes her as the plague of his life. So therefore, she is a disease.
So if it's a metaphor, what is the metaphor? If the wife is the disease, what are we supposed to get?
She's the plague of his life. So the metaphor is that she is a plague that is, consumed his life, makes him do the wrong thing, makes him continue to go back to the fish and ask for more. But I'm assuming that she's done other things as well. Sure. We don't know the full story, but that metaphor that he uses, the author, a plague, I think a plague or a disease by nature cannot be content.
Right on page 14, she's already a plague. She just started, she's already a plague on page 14.
So
Not her first whacking net,
Right.
So what are we supposed to make of that, Dave, that at the beginning she's a plague?
Yeah, she's...
What are we supposed to make of it?
This is just the latest iteration of her madness. Yeah. So, very well.
But then that gets to the question, why does he keep doing it when he says it's wrong? If he sees her as a plague, why go?
Can I answer to that? Sure. I was asking the question like, why did the fisherman let the fisher go at first time? And another question was, why did the fisherman keep on listening to his wife when he didn't like to listen to? And that, both of them are very much related because the person's character, the fisherman's character, is an easy listener. He doesn't have a strong will to keep his will. And he wasn't very comfortable listening to his wife's duty. He just got to doing that. And that first time, in my case, if I caught that kind of fish, then I would let it go. Yeah, and then so maybe I had some kind of deal with him, and then if I let go, what was the condition? So that's kind of like a businessman. I don't know what kind of morale that this brother wants to let the reader have. But in my understanding, the fisherman kept going back to fish to fulfill his wife's desire, and then at the first time that he let the fish go, it's kind of related to each other.
Why didn't he just ask the fish to rid him of his plague? Say,
Yeah,
plague of my life. Get rid of her.
Yeah, let's think about that for a little bit. Why does he go and ask for what the wife wanted and not ask for what, maybe to get rid of the plague?
He's a good person, that's why he doesn't want to do anything really bad to anyone else. But at the same time, that he's a good listener and not able to keep his own will, even if he think it's right. So that's kind of another thing. So these two things are related. I have lots and lots of evidence for that.
Yeah.
Path of least resistance. You just agree, just find whatever you want for
Right.
it. Yeah.
I have some personal experience of my father, his wife, second wife, like she did the same thing with him. Like he thought, oh, if I can just make her happy, if I just give her whatever she wants, then everything will be okay.
But then she's never happy.
Yeah.
Because she always wants more.
So take us back, Kara, right, to the original question. Let's hear from some people we haven't heard from. Why is she never content? Why does she always want more? Let's hear from some other people.
When she already knew her husband is always listening to her. And in a sense, her husband is spoiling her.
Her husband is what? I'm sorry.
Spoiling her.
No, but isn't that a good thing? No. So what's wrong with that? Maybe I'll ask him that way. So what's wrong with that?
Or it seems like his wife's wish is kind of inner voice of the husband. Inner voice. The husband himself doesn't say anything, doesn't want anything, but instead of his own wish, he is kind of expecting, or in a sense making his wife, instead of himself, wishes for something, and that is not really desirable or even reasonable. And so it's a kind of, they are not really the two different people, but in one person, there is a kind of wife and the husband, and they are kind of conflicting with each other.
That's creative. I really like that idea. So because human beings always have two sides. Yeah, two sides of their characteristics, right? Those two personalities. White angel and an evil. So I think this is it, right?
And if he really cannot agree with his wife's like wish or opinion, then probably he cannot go to ask for such a thing. But anyway, deep down in his heart, probably he's also wishing for something that his wife is also wanting. But the readers can blame only his wife, not the husband. But actually, they are kind of
same person.
Yeah.
Because they're not the same person. I think they do have agreements between those two.
Yeah.
So are you saying that the fisherman is not content as well?
Maybe he kind of by reasoning, he should be content with what he is given by the fish. But in a sense, in other part of his heart, he is also agreeing with his wife's opinion. We cannot be content with the current thing anymore, so we want to wish for something bigger and more, then we are going to be happier. And that can be his wife's theory, and then to a certain degree anyway, he's agreeing or he's accepting his wife's theory. So that's why even though he doesn't think the fish is not really making his wife's wish really come true at this moment, but anyway, he kept going, and then he kept asking, and that's why the husband is not really free from the kind of responsibility.
I think I'm talking too much. But anyway, meanwhile, listening to what Edward's mentioned, I thought of once you are not really content by yourself, you will never be contented by anything. So it's kind of endless desire. So maybe the wife herself didn't content with herself and with her own husband. And that's why he started asking for another thing, and bigger and bigger. And then you got onto the biggest thing that is reachable in the world. She couldn't be content by that. So she asked for something that she will never be able to get. So I think that even though she's got the power to control the sun and moon, she wouldn't be satisfied with what she had. So because she's not satisfied with what she has. So I think that's what I thought of right now.
Not satisfied with what she
with
is?
herself, with what she is. Yes.
And what is she?
Nothing to do with
What
what
do you
she
mean?
has. It's people normally satisfied with what she or what he is as kind of existence, like being itself. If a person cannot be satisfied or content by what he or she is, and no matter what kind of thing that person has, it wouldn't really satisfy that person. That's what I think of. Am I going too far? No.
But I have to take you back to evidence. What evidence do we have that she is not content with what she is?
Someone asking for more and more.
But how is that evidence that she's not
which is, I think it's psychological. I think this is kind of not interpreted, or it's kind of, you said something about speculative, right? Speculative. So, yeah, so I just bring a psychological perspective. I think most of the education that you're asking right now is something that we have to bring our own interpretation. It's not written on the paper and they give you the answer, right? So we have to do our own interpretation based on our own experiences. So this is why I'm thinking that, bringing out my philosophy and approach. And I go too far.
Very interesting question.
Jen, what do you think?
Julie?
Yes.
I think nobody said, like, schooling children, like, nobody said no to her whenever when she made wishes. No one said no, there's a limitation. So she never had learned that there's limitation. I think at first time when I wrote down the answer, I thought like she is a curious person that confined it in a little small space. So she wonders always, what if she has more? What if I have this? That was my first answer, but when I was listening to others, I thought of that second.
I agree with her. In this text, there's no limitation for wish. The fish should have mentioned the limit for wish. So she kept asking, and like you, the man just followed her wish. It should be mentioned.
So why, if she has no limitations, why do her wishes change from wanting things to wanting power?
It's a kind of human nature. And because seems like his wife is stupid, but if we look at ourselves, then we are always wanting something more. We are not really satisfied with what we have currently. And so that is, in a sense, that can be an impetus or motivation for the human development and improvement. And if we are satisfied and we are always happy with what we are currently have, then who would work so hard and then they are trying really best to earn something more and bigger, and they are trying to make themselves happier and richer and more powerful and more like, even in terms of the wisdom, they want to be wiser and smarter and more like younger.
Oh yeah.
And also taller, or thinner, and that kind of things. There is the like wishes that the fisherman's wife has made, kind of symbolizes of anything we are trying to earn as a human being. But from the fish's point of view, I think from the very beginning, with the first wish that the fisherman's wife has made, it seems like the fish already knew. She is wanting more and more, even though the fish makes all those like wishes come true. So that's why just letting those wishes happen in reality. But soon enough, it is coming to the original position. So that is really it's a kind of play of the fish, and then the human beings are kind of puppet of the kind of fish, or kind of the being really powerful and then wise enough to know what's really happening in the future. So that is a kind of this history showing us the kind of the nature of the human being, and then will be the destination, voice will be the final product of our.
Can I go back to the first question?
Sure.
I just thought it came up like, monkey see, monkey do, but nobody showed her the example of being content of what they have. Her husband is the only one she lives with now, but he is not happy with her wife, his wife. So he's not content with what he has now, but he never tries to change something and just complain. He didn't try to persuade her not to wish for more or try to make her.
So it's kind of the husband's fault for not changing.
It's husband's fault. This fisherman reminds me of my brother. He's living in his son's house. And then he's been doing this, always listening to his wife. Even though he doesn't like to do that, because he doesn't have kind of weaker character than my sister-in-law. And then whenever I visit their houses, he's the listener. And then my sister-in-law is a commander. He has to with whatever he was told. So that is the reality. I think the fisherman exactly the same as my brother. Sorry to say, but
So what is the author saying about relationships if he makes the fisherman the one who listens and the wife the commander?
So that's my commander.
But what is the author telling us? Why does he do it that way? He could have turned it the other way.
That's a very good question.
Yeah, if you look at the context of possibly when this was written, it was written 1400s, 1500s, maybe told through oral tradition. Usually at this time, it felt like the mother character was always the bad one. You know, the evil stepmother. The evil stepmother locks her away. The evil stepmother sells her off. It was always the mother character who was always seen as the bad person. And perhaps with the fisherman's wife never being content as well, going back to what Ajin was saying, I think it's a reflection on us as people too. Because are we ever truly, really content? I mean, would we have done the same thing? I think back to this American game show. It was on maybe 6 years ago. My nephew always watched it. Deal or No Deal. And these people, they found a suitcase that had $500,000 US in it, which was like one of the highest amounts you could get. No deal! I'm finding $1 million! And it's the same type of concept. It's like, no, I don't want to be emperor. I want something bigger. It's like, where else can you go from emperor? You know, besides just the wife, why is it we as people are never content?
It says on page 21, she was as far as possible. She was as far as able from being contented. And she could not sleep for thinking of what she would like to do next. Yeah, she was an emperor. But all she could think of is what she wanted next. So I think that's...
So Eli, do you agree that the author is making a statement about human nature?
Yeah. It's pretty straightforward.
And what
commentary on human nature that...
Tell me the commentary, what is it?
That her being content or not wasn't really based on what she had. It was based on her deciding she's going to be content or not.
Also, it's not really said in the story, but I go back to when in the very beginning, I said what I wanted was to be rich or have unlimited resources. And then, like, my uncle always said something like that, if you win the lottery, or you just get a large amount of money, for instance, that you didn't earn, like, it would never make you happy, and that, like, lotto winners are usually not happy because you didn't earn that money. Do you guys agree that, in all these situations that even if it's not the wife's personality, like, would anyone be happy or content in that situation if they were given those things? Like, if you were made emperor right now, or I said you never have to work again, here's, $20 million, would you be happy? is.
I'll sign up for
But think
it.
about it in the long term. I mean, you don't have to work.
So that really goes back to the thing that I made. Yeah, people, a human being, not really satisfied with what they are. They're not satisfied with what they have. So this is why they want and want and want more and more. So that's all. People think that that is kind of a necessary evil, but I think it's not really. If we are really content by ourselves, who we are, and maybe they are probably satisfied with what they have.
And if you also want to look at it metaphorically, like Steve was talking, there could be a commentary at the time of the bourgeois and upper class and kings and queens, because going back to his question about the relationship between the environment and the largesse of the wishes, well, as the kings and queens got richer, what happened to the environment around them? You know, it was in chaos that, I mean, there were storms, the crops might not have always been good, people were starving because the kings and queens wanted more, so look what happened to them. Maybe it's also commentary on the rich people at the time.
I'm going to stop it there because you can see how it continues to evolve. It just continues to grow, and you can keep thinking about other aspects and other ways to see it. The whole idea together is smarter.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Go right ahead.
Because in a Korean context, we like to use your methods, something like discuss about textbook being read. And what if the student,
I'm sorry, say it again.
student doesn't
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
It often happens in Korean context.
Right.
Even
Even here, did you notice? I mean, sounds like already Korean culture. Here it is. This is where people. It's just the culture that we haven't learned how to have conversation or to talk in front of a group and to be comfortable in front of a group and things like that.
But are you saying young students, if they have the appropriate language level, I mean, certain students
even in Korean.
can't participate? Oh, in
And they
Korean
choose not
language.
to.
Korean language, they
Choose
don't
not to.
participate in discussion.
But if you notice, I just called on somebody. Jenna, right?
Yeah.
Am I saying it right?
Yeah.
I realized I've got a whole lot of people here who are not speaking, and I just called on somebody. Because remember, they had time to write their answer before we started, so they can always just go back and read what they wrote. But remember, one of my goals is communication skills. I have got to, even if it's a baby step, get them feeling comfortable sharing their ideas in front of the group. And in the beginning, you're right, it's difficult. Sometimes it's pulling teeth to have discussion because they're not comfortable with it, but you baby step and you keep going. After discussion, I usually get them to reflect. What did we do well? What do we need to do better next time? And then children have their own reflection sheet. What did I do well? What do I need to work on next time? And when a child, they know that, people know I didn't participate. Next time, I need to try and participate. And so I'm going to start watching them to see if next time they try. Because it is one of the objectives of the program, helping people to feel confident with their ideas, comfortable enough that they can speak in front of a group.
And going back to that idea of Korean culture, I think you might have to just emphasize throughout the year that there's no wrong answers in discussions, because so often they're taught that, well, teacher is on pedestal.
Yeah.
Teacher is the authority. So I noticed that too when I try to get my students to speak when I taught elementary. Teacher, what do you want us to think?
Mm-hmm.
Teacher, what is the answer?
Yes.
No, I'm looking for it from you guys.
When I started doing this job 6 years ago at TESOL, and I would come in and I would expect the students had done the reading, and I would just do this, like lead a discussion. I would ask questions and no one would answer, and I would just sit and wait, and there would be this uncomfortable silence and no one would say anything.
Right.
Students didn't like that, and I would get evaluations that would say, oh, he asks questions and then waits for us to answer, and we don't know because we didn't do the reading, or we don't want to say the wrong answer, and he shouldn't do that, So, I mean, but in a way, it kind of, because, if you ask the questions like a challenge to them, and obviously you're displeased or show your displeasure by not speaking again until someone speaks, it's not really effective. So, I find that it's just a process that I have to coach my students along in this process of reading, and instead of just requiring them to do the reading, make them do some kind of summary sheet or ask questions that can be answered without having done the reading, which is not, in this situation it do some reading yourself, like read something and what do you think about this, and then I have to take a more active role at first, and then small group discussions, we're having just two people talk to each other, think, pair, share. That is ways that you can break down that. But just going into the classroom and saying, okay, everyone's done the reading, here's the question, why, this one question that let's discuss, and then nobody says anything. So you have to scaffold, scaffold the process, and it can take longer for a different cultural context.
And starting out with easier questions that they can answer, and maybe giving an example yourself. What is it like to learn a new language? For me, I was frustrated.
Yeah.
Giving your own examples to show it's okay to be wrong.
Definitely. Great. So when we're working with students, and we teach teachers this as well, start off, you've got a scaffolding. I would have a question that has answers right in it. So do you think she was not content because of this or because of this? And all they have to do is choose one, and that's an easy way to get them started. Starting off by creating that culture. Guys, we're working together here. We're smarter together. There are no really wrong answers as long as you have evidence to support what you're saying. And getting them to feel comfortable sharing their ideas. But it's going to take some time, because even in American education, we have really taught them to, there's one right answer and here it is, and you've got to give it back to the teacher. And it's interesting, kindergarten and up to second grade, the children are amazing at this process because we haven't beaten it out of them yet. They still very much love to talk and love to share their ideas, and they don't care about being right and wrong. But when I get to about third grade, they stop talking because they're like, no,
where's in the book?
Exactly. I don't know the right answer, so I'm not going to say anything. And all of a sudden, we've got to get over that.
The most famous, the most watched TED Talk of all time is how teachers kill creativity.
Is
it? What's his name? Anyway, if you go look at TED Talks, the number one most watched TED Talk of all time is this British guy. It's from 19.
Some whiteboard art along with it.
That's great, but it's the whole thing about how teachers around the world systematically kill creativity.
That's correct.
Because once I got to the middle school stages when I was teaching in America, then I had to teach them, well, there's not wrong answers, but there's appropriate and inappropriate.
Right.
Because they're middle schoolers.
Right. But hopefully, the more the children do the process, the more comfortable they get with it. Sometimes I tell people, just start with like a fun discussion. In the U.S., I mean, just something that I know they have all seen. Oh my gosh, did you guys see the movie about something that I know they're going to talk about? Did you guys see the game last night? Oh my God, they will talk about something like that. Find a way to get them talking so that they start talking and then move to other things. I always say, start with a fun, accessible story that they just get so interested in that they're like, I want to talk about this one. This one is just something I have to talk about. Find something like that because that gets their interest and then they start to overcome some of their fears. But every child is different and you just have to meet them where they are. That's okay. It's okay if they want to sit there and sort of listen. That's fine. I can always look at their build your answer form, that sheet that you have, and make sure they were with us, that they were understanding. But they just didn't want to talk yet. Okay. But I am going to, I've got them on my seating chart, and I am going to start watching them because I have a goal. And the goal is communication skills. Got to get them feeling confident, sharing their ideas. So I'm just going to start watching. So after discussion, we would come back to that original question, talk about the different, or chart maybe the different answers we came up with, and then they go back to their own answer and say, okay, what do I think after I've heard all of this? So that they have hopefully a more developed answer than they had in the beginning. Again, Jenna had said it. Well, in the beginning I thought, but as I was listening to people, it sort of changed, and now I'm thinking, yeah, we've got to get them to see your answer can change. You didn't have to have the right answer before we started talking. No. And so they realized, oh, I learned from this, I grew from this, and it's okay that I changed my mind. Questions about the process? Or anything that you're thinking about? Before we start along with looking at objectives and goals that you had for your students, go back to that sheet where you wrote it. I said write it on the back of, I think, the story, if that's where you wrote it. If you wrote it somewhere else, take a minute, go back and find it. Put a star by anything this program is going to help you accomplish with the students. Put a star by anything the program is going to help you accomplish in your goals. Then how did we do? Did we help you accomplish some of your goals? Absolutely. Good. Good. It's so interesting. Some people say, yeah, you know, it'll be good. Or yeah, you did a good job of, you know, helping us meet some of our goals. And I'm like, how many out of how many? And they're like 5 out of 5. That's good? 5 out of 5 is pretty excellent, I think, you know? So somebody give me a number. How many of your objectives did we hit?
5.
5 out of 5? Awesome. Awesome. What else? What? Somebody else give me a number. I want to hear. Oh my gosh, come on. This is an easy one. It's a factual. I'm still not getting answered. That's not what I was looking at. Right.
Easy question, they don't know what the answer to that. You have to be taking
Come on, teachers. Jump.
Okay, just because I forgot already. What was the number we were going up to? 5.
No, I just want to know how many you wrote and how many we hit. That's all.
All of them?
All of them. That's pretty amazing. So I know I was excited when I saw the program because I was like, what? These are skills my children need for the rest of their life. My children are not confident speaking in front of a group. I was teaching high school at that point. High school? You've got to be kidding me. You're about to go into the world. You had better be able to express your ideas confidently in front of a group. It's just what life is going to expect of you. You better be able to think critically about what people are saying to you. Have you watched the news lately? I don't know what it's like here, but in